The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
Doug Vogt is joining us right now. And as I said, he has spent 2.5 years with Paul Eyre on the exploring and researching the forgery of the Barack Obama birth certificate. It's been a while since we've done this show, since we've done this topic. And when Doug got in touch with me and said, you know, I would like to come on and talk with you about this, I said, yeah, let's do it. Let's absolutely do it. So he's with us right now. Doug Vogt, welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Oh, listen, I'm so glad that you popped up and said, hey, you know, we've got some news, we've got some information. So first of all, let's tell the folks a little bit about you, who you are, and what you do.
I used to own a company called Nova Typesetting. We did typesetting of books, math books, and all kinds of stuff for about 11 or 12 years. And then I got into the graphics business of selling scanners and doing service bureau work, as well as selling the software, document imaging software, including to county and city governments. Collectively, it's about 32 or 33 years of experience. Paul has been in the graphics business since the late 50s. He's 75 years old right now. And he owned a very large typesetting company in New Jersey, also branches in New York, and did catalogs for Montgomery Ward's and a bunch of other major companies. He knows graphics arts and display type very well. In fact, he came up with some of his own typefaces. And then he also owned a part ownership in a graphics company, a photo finishing company. Doing photographs, commercial stuff. And he still does typesetting on the side for friends and a couple of clients. He has over 50 years. So collectively, he and I have over 83 years experience in the graphics and type business. No question we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
So it's never been a question about that. We started working on it. I met him when Orly invited myself and him to go to Hawaii. I think it was like July of 2011.
And that would be Dr. Orly Cates, Dr. Orly Cates from California. Yeah, the attorney/dentist who has been involved with this from the outset. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that for somebody who might be listening, and we have to assume that not everybody is up to speed. So, okay.
Sure.
So you met, yeah.
So we've done a number of affidavits for a number of lawyers, and most of the lawyers basically had used pieces of our stuff or all of our stuff at one time or another. We decided I was even invited to Arizona twice and helped the sheriff's office, Mike Zullo also, who's the lead investigator, and he was very helpful, and I helped him a lot. I'm the one who identified who the forger was and who the spy was. And he was very appreciative, and he, though, took the tact of only investigating the PDF copy, which he let the forensic examiner in Hawaii look at. Fortunately, after about 5 months ago, he contacted me through a friend and wanted to get 5 blank copies of Paul's. We typeset the birth certificate, a birth certificate from scratch, because that was some of the tests we wanted to do. We had vintage typewriters of that period, and the best way to know of what we were looking at was real or not is actually typing up our own with an elite typewriter on our own form. We already had known the typeface that was on the originals. It was, the headings are done Futura, and the body of the form is Cheltenham. But of course, in 1961, it was hot metal, which they could never replicate now from an old linotype machine. But we use the ITC version of Cheltenham, which the thins are slightly thinner because they can do it. They can't do it in hot metal, though. But anyway, we typeset the thing from scratch. Mike Zulu finally decided he was going to look at the typewriter type to see if we were right. And, of course, we are. And I'm going to go through some of the stuff tonight so everybody knows that it's real. This is not made up. the birth certificate that he presented, both the short form and the long form, which we did most of the studies on, is a raving bad forgery. And we have a total of 21 points of forgery. Most of it is on the long form birth certificate, but I even was able to prove that the short form that he released in June of 2008, I think it was 8, was a forgery also. And
Okay.
it was because of the registrar stamp.
I feel like I'm reading the final chapter in a book. I want you to take us to the beginning. You started by saying that you met Paul Irie, who, as you said, has been in the business for, oh gosh, I don't know,
50 years.
50 years. You met him through Orly Tates, Dr. Orly Tates, at the outset of the Obama. I mean, was this before Obama was even elected in 2008, or was this shortly after? Take us from that point.
This is about July of 2011. Remember, he released his birth certificate in April 27th news conference of 2011. If people go on to the, we have 2 websites. One I've dedicated to just this subject, which is ObamaForgeryBook.com. You'll see all the documents, including a grayscale version of the affidavit, which has the 20 points of forgery in it. And you'll clearly see the stuff. And it's well explained there technically. Some of it's a little bit technical, some of it's not, but everybody will be able to see it. Lots of pictures. There is no question this thing's a raving forgery. But that's when we met, we talked, we helped the sheriff's office, but when he wasn't going to, when Mike Zullo was going to use the typewriter stuff, we decided we were going to go and do our own thing. And because also Mike Zullo had gotten, or I should say the sheriff got a letter from his district attorney from Mariposa County, which said basically, we don't have jurisdiction. And we can't bring any case against it. It's only the Secretary of State in Arizona or the Attorney General can bring a case against only the Democratic Party for putting a candidate up that's not qualified to run for office. So I summed it up pretty fast. I said, and then of course Mike said he was only going to try to do this thing at Congress and get a congressman to do something, which he's not going to. We don't believe he's going to be able to because the Speaker of the House, Boehner, is not going to allow it. He stops it every time. Even the sheriff's office had said that's what they were coming up against, and what they were told by the congressman is Boehner won't allow it, period.
Okay. You're talking about Sheriff.
Somehow he's been compromised.
Doug, you're talking about Sheriff Joe Arpaio and Congressman who? Congressman who?
Well, they had seen a number of congressmen. Mike Zullo was the one who went to Congress to try to find congressmen that would talk with him and receive his packet. But the congressmen have told him more than one. He didn't say which ones. That the Speaker of the House is the one who prevents it. That's the problem. So a political solution in this case is not viable because of that. I had done a lot of research, and in fact I read most of Title 18 of the Federal Code, and I came across 2 laws that one is misprision of felony and the other one is misprision of treason. And very simply, it says that if someone, doesn't matter who, is a citizen of the United States and has evidence of a crime or crimes against the United States, they're supposed to report it. And each law gives a list of who you're supposed to report it to, a list of positions. Both of them have a United States judge. This law, both of them were actually passed in the very first Congress, second session, and signed into law by George Washington, along with accessory after the fact, who was a principal in a forgery. They set all this up in the very first Congress. So there's no question what the Founding Fathers intended, because they're the ones who wrote the law. So I said, okay. So I took this stuff. Starting about a year ago, I started doing the research, cleaning up the research and focusing on what Paul and I had, and to do an affidavit and to file it to a federal court here in Seattle Now, one of the laws says you're supposed to file it in the jurisdiction of where the crime happened. In this case, Perkins Coie is the attorney for Barack Obama, who supposedly has spent about $2 million sealing his records, defending all these challenges against his birth certificate and his other school records. And and Robert Bauer was a member of this firm, and at the time he was the president's personal lawyer there, the personal White House lawyer. He ordered Mrs. Crowley to go, a lawyer here in Perkins Coie, to go from Seattle to Honolulu with money to pay for the birth certificate. She supposedly then, the next day, went from Hawaii to Washington, D.C., arrived there in the evening sometime in Tuesday, and then Wednesday they presented it to the public. They had supposedly two copies they got from Hawaii. They wound up making Xerox copies, black and white copies of one of them, and they made a packet for the newsman. And they even mentioned it in the White House. And they presented to the newsman, and one of the newsmen in ABC posted it on his news station, his TV station's website, where I was able to download it, and it was actually a high resolution. It was originally scanned at 600 dpi, and then they saved it at 300. But the most important part is this. The chain of custody for the newsman's copy was clean. It was easily traceable from origin to destination. And so Paul and I used that copy, not the PDF, to do our analysis. And you'll remember the OBOTs only wanted to focus on the PDF copy because there wasn't a clear chain of custody on it. It was so badly mangled, and the forger had actually done 3 or 4 extra steps to use JBig2, which is a pattern matching algorithm, a compression algorithm, that obliterates the ability to compare the typefaces of what's on the document. She did this deliberately so you couldn't use it. Also, it would cover up some of the mistakes she did, which were plenty. But it didn't matter to Paul and I, because I had made the decision early, over 1.5 years ago, we're going to use the reporter's copy, forget the PDF. Let the sheriff go use it, let him enjoy it. And that's where we came up with, and that's why many of the OBOTs are deathly scared of what I've done, is because they can't use that line about the PDF, about a Xerox machine doing it. It's all nonsense. It's pure bull. And that's how we found everything.
So you were using a photocopy of the birth certificate?
Yeah, it's a copy of a copy. It's a copy of a copy. Wow. Remember, the line that the governor, which is one of the exhibits that's on the webpage, people could read it. The governor's letter said that Fuddy witnessed the copying of the original birth certificate. And supposedly the registrar puts his stamp on it, and they put the Department of Health's round embossed seal on it and dated it, and then supposedly gave the 2 copies to Judith Crowley, the lawyer. But the problem is this. The story is totally bogus. It's just a lie. But they are bound to the lie they gave, including the White House repeated the story. So that's the problem they have. What they said and what they publicly wrote in their letters, it's part of the affidavit, it's part of the exhibits. They're stuck with that. They have to live with those lies. Now, NBC is the interesting one. In the White House news conference, I have it quoted. Towards the end of the questioning regarding this is the 8:48 in the morning news conference, the pre-one, before the president got there. The news conference, now remember, he has a black and white copy, but he doesn't see the seal on it. So the newsman asked Pfeiffer, does it have a seal? And then Pfeiffer says, yes, it has a seal. Now, they knew they had a problem. So they had Savannah Guthrie, who was the White House correspondent for MSNBC, supposedly see it, and she claims then she saw it. And she winds up putting on a Twitter account, I saw it, and she puts a picture up. I also have a video of her saying the same thing, too. So she's nailed. The problem is there was no embossed seal on that birth certificate. And the reason we know is that we have examples of, I think, 7 or 8 legitimate birth certificates with real seals on them. And when an embossed seal actually damages the paper. It puts holes in it. And it shows a pattern that's supposed to say the Department of Health, State of Hawaii. And so it was part of the green background. But when they copied it on the black and white copier, it disappeared totally. Now, we have the legitimate ones that we have a copy of a copy, even a black and white copy. It's one of the exhibits. And you can clearly see on legitimate ones, you still see the seal because the seal becomes part of the paper. But on theirs, it drops out because almost all the copiers use a green light source. And therefore, it was the dropout color. The green was the dropout color. So any remnant image of a round seal disappears totally. And there wasn't any. I believe she lied, and the proof I have is there. Now, you ask yourself, why did she do something like this stupid? And this is why. I have it from a Washington Post news article. It was 2008. General Electric owns NBC, or did at the time. They sold it to Comcast now, most recently. And they also own GE Capital, which did the financing and leasing for their equipment. But during the boom, the real estate boom, they also wound up financing mortgages. You got it? So around 2008, when the market collapsed, GE Capital had $340 billion worth of bad paper, unproducing mortgages. And they wanted to get their hands on the TARP money to bail some of it out, and they couldn't do it. They weren't a bank, but the Obama administration broke the rules. They became their savior. They changed the rules, and they let GE Capital dump $340 billion onto FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. That's the federal agency that insures banks and savings and loans. And all they had to do was pay $2.3 billion in the insurance policy. Isn't that nice of them? By the way, that comes out to about $1,129 per person, per U.S. citizen person in the United States. Now, don't all of you feel so warm and fuzzy inside that you helped a large corporation like that dump $340 billion on the rest of us? That's what happened. In other words, the administration, the left-wing Marxists in the administration, bought 2 networks, NBC and MSNBC.
Yep.
Now you know why. Now you know why MSNBC is so left-wing, and so they're the propaganda ministry for the administration.
Right.
Now you know the whole story.
Yep. Yep. Oh my gosh,
now,
that's pretty amazing. Okay.
Oh, it gets better. It gets better. About 9 or 12 days later, 9 or 12 days later, Savannah Guthrie is promoted to become the co-host of the 9 a.m. Today Show. What a miracle. And then about a year later, she gets promoted again and becomes the co-host on the regular Today Show, I'm sure for more money and prestige. So she did this little act she did for her career.
Right.
But what she did, she made herself a principal in a forgery case, which is also a treason case. There is no statute of limitations on treason because there's a death sentence connected to it. Any federal statute that has a death sentence connected to it, there is no statute of limitations. So all the people from the executive who did these things in GE Capital, NBC, the executive producer of the Today Show, they have major liability.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth or people with something to hide?